today, a strong jobs report for June, over 800,000 new jobs, but the unemployment rate held steady. If you look at the trends. Exciting plans for the 4th of July weekend? Well, keep this in mind. Gas prices are expected to be the highest in almost a decade. And the second richest man in the world is renting. We talk about buying a home versus renting one. That and much more, coming up on NTD Business. Good evening and great to have you with us. I'm Paul Graney. The Labor Department says the U.S. added 850,000 jobs last month, far more than economists expected. But strangely, the unemployment rate rose slightly to 5.9%. Average hourly earnings rose just 10 cents less than the 2 months before. And the labor force participation rate, which measures the percentage of Americans who are in the labor force, hasn't improved since August of last year. All in all, America's labor market is still down 6.8 million jobs compared with February 2020. I got analysis on the new report from ZipRecruiter's labor economist Julia Pollock. Asked why the unemployment rate went up, even with 850,000 new jobs.
Well, this has been a very strange report because there are total inconsistencies between the household survey and the payroll survey, the two parts of the report. The household survey is the one that gives you the unemployment rate, the labor force participation rate, all of those kinds of population statistics. And it's much more volatile than the payroll report. And I think this time around, its findings are a little bit anomalous, and I think we'll see them reverse and get more in line with the payroll survey next month.
Very good. We see the average hourly earnings increased in June, but less than the previous 2 months. I had noticed. I personally expected them to rise faster, given all the news about tight employment circumstances, competition for talent, and also inflation expectations. You'd expect people asking for higher wages. What do you think?
Well, wages are above their pre-pandemic trajectory. I mean, they rose 10% in leisure and hospitality alone over the last 6 months. I think this report still shows quite a lot of upward pressure on wages, especially with, if to the extent that the labor force participation rate really is flat, employers are struggling to compete for talent, and they are pulling out all the stops to try to fill those vacancies.
Why is that? Why do we see the labor force participation rate remain flat? Do you feel this is still temporary, people looking after kids at home, etc., or are we seeing a more permanent or longer-term cultural trend that people mightn't go back to work?
That's a good question, and I think the jury is still out. I expect labor force participation to rebound throughout the summer and really sharply in the fall. The pandemic is still around, although we did see more than 20 million people, and mostly working age people, get fully vaccinated over the past month. So I was expecting to see more of a lift there. But there are some people, I think, who want to make up for lost time and enjoy their summer, and who plan to get back to work seriously in the fall when schools fully reopen, when their businesses are fully reopened, and the pandemic is really in the rearview mirror.
Are we seeing any interesting hiring trends at the moment? Anywhere to look out for?
Yes, so one thing I think that's interesting is that job postings are still rising in fields like manufacturing and construction, where job growth was very weak or even negative in this report. And there, I think the labor supply constraints are really starting to bite. And if we see those sort of relax a little bit over the next few months, we could see even faster recovery in the jobs market. And that's what I'm really hoping for.
Julia Pollock, ZipRecruiter. And it's not just the U.S. that's short on truckers. They're so desperate in Britain that one of the biggest food producers there wants the army to step in to drive the trucks. NTD's Patrick Hayden has more from London.
Premier Foods, one of Britain's biggest food companies, is calling for the government to use the army as one option to help relieve a shortage of truck drivers. Many army personnel have licenses that allow them to drive trucks.
It's probably a good idea if the army would step in, especially to get food to the retail stores and to wholesalers to be able to deliver what we do. And it's causing major problems, and it's going to spike prices.
He says the orders are being cancelled due to the driver shortage. Industry leaders say that soon supermarket shelves could face gaps. A collapse of supply chains after the pandemic and Brexit has led to a shortage of more than 100,000 truck drivers. Reddish says the current furlough scheme means many drivers would rather not work.
Well, I guess it's all to do with the fact that they're getting 80% of the wages. So, would you want to work for 20%, a full-time job, when you can stay at home for 80%? And that's the crux of the matter.
The furlough scheme is set to finish at the end of September.
Once it comes to an end, I think there'll be a flux of people out of work, but there'll also be all these HGV drivers that then come back into the workplace.
Reddish's Federation for Independent Retailers is lobbying the government to give truck drivers essential worker status. Essential workers are considered vital for public health and safety. The British Retail Consortium has a less urgent response to the situation. It said the drop in drivers is causing minor disruptions. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
Are you planning to drive anywhere this 4th of July weekend? Well, get ready to pay more than normal. Gas prices are expected to be the highest for the holiday weekend in 7 years. So, NTD's Arlene Richards has the details.
On this July 4th weekend, prepare for the highest Independence Day gas prices in 7 years. AAA says yesterday's average of $3.12 per gallon is almost $1 over what it was last year.
We're at about the highest price for gas at this time of year in about 6 or 7 years. More people are going to be traveling by car this 4th of July period than we've ever had before.
Highlighted states experiencing average prices over $3. Experts say we're still feeling the impact of the Colonial Pipeline hack. Another cause, a shortage of tanker truck drivers.
If there's a shortage of truck drivers, there's a difficulty of getting fuel to where it needs to be. So there's definitely a supply chain issue there.
Gas prices normally hit a high point in the spring and come down in the summer. But that isn't happening so far this year. Analysts say prices could surge another 20 cents per gallon. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Our results of this week's OPEC Plus meeting will also impact where the prices are going. The group has resumed talks today after a standoff on Thursday. Top oil producers Saudi Arabia and Russia have pushed for a deal to pump more oil through the end of the year, but the UAE blocked the deal. So, Americans are set to hit the roads and the skies as they travel for the July 4th weekend, and a lot of people are going to be traveling. Friday is expected to be the busiest day of travel at Chicago's O'Hare and Midway International airports since the beginning of the pandemic. That's according to the Chicago Department of Aviation. It says more than 220,000 passengers are expected to pass through O'Hare Friday. Add to that the 41,000 passengers expected at Midway on the same day. It's all part of a massive increase in travel compared to last year. Between Thursday and next Tuesday, O'Hare is expected to see 2.5 times more passengers than the same period last year. And it won't be in place for this weekend, but the U.S. government is planning to get you a refund on your checked bags if they're delayed. Right now, airlines only need to pay you back if they lose your bags. So here's NTD's Evelyn Lee with what that means for you.
Airlines might have to refund fees for delayed baggage in the near future. The Transportation Department wants to introduce a regulation that requires airlines to refund fees on extras if the airline fails to provide the service during the flight. Currently, refunds are only necessary if the bags are lost.
A lot of airlines delivered your bags 2 weeks, 2 days, 2 weeks, even 3 months late, and they didn't have to reimburse you because technically they didn't lose your bags.
Airlines also need to pay for reasonable incidental expenses caused by the delay. But it's not clear how often airlines keep fees even when bags are significantly delayed. With the new rules, airlines would have to give refunds if the bag isn't delivered within 12 hours of a domestic flight or 25 hours after an international flight. But Henderson says the amount of complaints about lost baggage is surprisingly low.
You'd be surprised how few bags actually get lost. In fact, it's only 1 out of 177 people who get their bags lost.
But if it happens, it's a hassle. And Jen Ruiz says it has a large impact on the travel experience.
And once I got there, the very first thing I had to do was go and find an ATM. And then after that, I had to find a way to get to the mall. And I had all of this, before I could even settle down and stretch and take in the fact that I had gotten to a new destination.
So will this proposed regulation encourage airlines to fix the lost bag problem?
Yes, absolutely. We saw something similar happen when consumers used to get stuck on the tarmac.
He says passengers often got stuck on a plane for hours without being able to stretch or use the bathroom. Then, after the Department for Transportation issued new rules, airlines dramatically cut down on these instances. Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
And stocks closed higher again on Wall Street, with the S&P 500 closing up for a seventh straight day. The Dow rose 153 points, over 0.4%. S&P 500 gained 32 points, 0.75%. The Nasdaq added 117 points today, 0.8%. Markets will be closed Monday for Independence Day. But Japan's Toyota is surprising the U.S. auto industry. It outsold General Motors last quarter. That's never happened before. Now it's expected to be America's new best-selling automaker. But it was close. Toyota only sold 577 more vehicles than GM in the second quarter. It could show that Toyota maybe managed the chip shortage better than GM and other American companies too. One analyst says Toyota is able to plan its supply chain further into the future and has more experience in managing scarce products. Earlier reports indicate Toyota was hoarding chips and wasn't feeling the impact. In contrast, Ford suffered heavily from the lack of chips and sold far fewer vehicles. The company saw a 26.9% decline in sales. And also today, worrying news for Tesla. One of the Tesla's new flagship models apparently caught fire while someone was driving it. That's what the driver's lawyer says. Tesla launched the Model S Plaid last month, calling it faster than any Porsche and safer than any Volvo. The fire reportedly happened just 3 days after the vehicle was delivered. Lawyers haven't named the driver, only saying he's an executive entrepreneur. They say he couldn't even get out of the blazing car at first as the electric door system failed. The driver then used force to push the door open. After rolling for some distance, the Tesla allegedly turned into a fireball near the owner's Pennsylvania home. Local authorities confirmed that a Tesla was on fire in a now deleted Facebook post. One lawyer representing the driver told us they want Tesla to stop selling the cars before a full investigation. We reached out to Tesla but didn't hear back. And Tesla owner Elon Musk says he's renting a $50,000 home in Texas near his SpaceX launch site. Apparently he doesn't believe in owning a home. He once said possessions kind of weigh you down. Does that apply to everyone? NTD's Phil Zoe looks into the pros and the cons of renting and buying.
To buy or not to buy? That is the age-old question. Today we talk about buying a home versus renting a home. What are the pros and what are the cons? Professor Kathleen Riggs has been teaching family and consumer sciences in Utah since the 1980s. She's a homeowner herself.
I like the sense of belonging to an area with people that you see on a regular basis and can develop strong relationships with.
But she says buying a home is not for everyone because it comes with great responsibilities.
If you aren't able physically, emotionally, or you don't want to develop the skills to take care of a yard, maybe a garden, a little orchard, don't go there.
Real estate agent Lauren Hurwitz helps her clients buy and rent homes in Westchester, New York.
If you are somebody who in the past year made a ton of money in the stock market and you have nowhere to put it, then yes, buying a home might be for you. Or if you're somebody who's about to expand their family, then buying a home might make the best sense for you because ideally you're staying in that home for a long time.
But renting also has its perks.
You don't have those unexpected costs, and perhaps you lost your job in the last year and you're starting a new job. You don't necessarily want to shell out a ton of money for a down payment, and renting might make good sense for you.
The median house price was up over 20% in May compared to the same time last year.
People are more mobile and they may want to leave after a year or two. Some people don't have money for a down payment. And renting is a good solution for people at any age, depending on their particular circumstances.
Ira enjoys being a homeowner so he can customize the outdoor space to his liking.
My wife is growing a little vegetable garden up there, and it's good to have when you live in a city to have outdoor space that you can use.
Buying and renting can both work, depending on your preference. Phil Zoe, NTD News, New York.
And the federal budget deficit could hit $3 trillion this year, according to the Congressional Budget Office. That would be the second largest deficit in American history. It would put 2021's deficit at triple the shortfall of 2019 and bigger than the size of the U.S. economy. It would be about $130 billion lower than last year's, if that's any consolation. 2020's deficit was over $3.1 trillion after massive spending bills and a huge decrease in economic activity. The CBO has also doubled its forecast for U.S. economic growth, though, this year to 7.4%. A nonpartisan think tank says that the strong economic growth projection suggests it's time for the government to move away from borrowing money and eventually reduce the national debt. Until then, the government will be forced to borrow money to cover spending. Right now, the vast majority of that money comes from the Federal Reserve in the form of newly created dollars. So how much are these newly created dollars contributing to the price increases we're seeing this year? Asked inflation and currency expert Professor Steve Hanke.
So far, they're indirectly contributing because the deficit that is being run by the U.S. government, which ultimately adds to this debt level, is being monetized and financed by the Federal Reserve System. That means the Federal Reserve System has been buying the bonds that have been issued to finance the deficit. So indirectly, it has played some role, but the focus has to be on the money supply itself, because inflation, as Milton Friedman taught us many years ago, is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. So it's money that matters. Money dominates. It's not this fiscal picture, the debt picture, and so forth. That's a secondary type of thing. The main thing is the money supply.
So from a mechanism perspective, if it's not coming through the monetization of government debt, where primarily this new money that's causing the price inflation, where is it going? How is it entering the system primarily?
Well, number one, it's the Federal Reserve System is part of the picture because they produce about 15% of the total broad money in the United States is produced by the Fed. So if you look at the liability side of their balance sheet, you have high-powered money there. So that's one producer. But the real elephant in the room is the commercial banking system. You know, about 85% of all the broad money in the United States is actually produced by commercial banks. I mean, it's produced privately in a way.
But you're saying that the commercial banks are responsible for, I think, 85% of the new money supply. Am I correct?
Well, not new incremental. The total that's out there, the total mass. There are two different things. One is the total mass that's out there right now, and if you measure the mass, the commercial banks account for about 85% of the mass, and the Fed about 15%. But if you look at the incremental, what's happening right now, the additions to the mass, the Fed is adding much more, at about a rate about 4 times higher than the commercial banks. The rate of addition to the mass is much more significant by the Fed, but the total mass is much more significant by the commercial banks.
Very good. So the Fed, is this primarily through monetization of companies' debt? Is this bond purchase? Is it mortgage-backed securities, or what are they doing?
Well, it's the U.S. Treasury issues and mortgage-backed securities, both. So they're buying at a rate of $120 billion a month. They're on a regular program of grinding out, buying $120 billion per month. So the idea that they've cut back or they're tightening up is just not true. The engine's going. Their plan is, until further notice, to keep buying federal debt and mortgage-backed securities. Those are the main things at this rate of $120 billion per month.
Professor Steve Hanke, Johns Hopkins University. And Chinese ride-hailing app Didi shares fell 6% today after the Chinese regime said it launched an investigation into it. It's apparently to protect national security and the public interest. But Didi won't be allowed to register any new users during the investigation. Just 2 days ago, Didi made its debut on the New York Stock Exchange, the biggest U.S. listing by a Chinese company since 2014. It offers a wide range of services in China and over 15 international markets. It gathers vast amounts of real-time mobility data every day. Now, Chinese regulators have tightened rules for the country's tech giants. Companies are made to collect, store, and handle key data in line with the goals of the Chinese regime. And French authorities are investigating 4 fashion retailers for their connections to China's Xinjiang region. French prosecutors suspect them of concealing crimes against humanity. NTD's Patrick Hayden has the details.
French prosecutors have opened an investigation into 4 fashion retailers suspected of concealing crimes against humanity in China's Xinjiang region. The probe is linked to accusations against China over its treatment of minority Muslim Uyghurs, including forced labor. China denies the claims. A source told Reuters that Uniqlo France, a unit of Japan's fast retailing, Zara owner Inditex, France's SMCP and Skechers are the subject of the investigation. France has a central office to fight crimes against humanity, genocide and war crimes, founded in 2013. The US has already recognized China's treatment of Uyghurs as genocide. Zara owner Inditex rejected the claims it's tied to forced labor in China. SMCP said it would cooperate with the French authorities to prove the allegations false. And Fast Retailing said it hadn't been contacted and has no partnerships in Xinjiang. 2 non-governmental organizations filed the complaint in France in early April against the multinationals for concealment of forced labor and crimes against humanity. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
And still to come this evening, billionaire Richard Branson getting ready to blast off into space just 9 days before Jeff Bezos. What does Branson have to say about who gets to go first? Slovakia's auto industry bursting with innovation. Developers test a flying car completing a 35-minute intercity flight. That and more after this short break.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm going to pass the savings directly on to you. Go to MyPillow.com right now to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. For example, you can get my premium MyPillows, regularly $69.98, now just $29.98, the lowest price ever.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.
Get ready, world, for a whole new way to invest. Introducing the Unicorn Hunters.
We are talking about a cultural and economic shift.
A savvy group of investors whose only job is to provide an unvarnished assessment of who they think can become the next unicorn.
I am in and I'm going to invest.
We all know why we're here. We're here to meet the next unicorn opportunity.
This could be a game changer for a lot of families.
Together with you, they're on the hunt for the next unicorn.
Sorry, Jeff Bezos. It looks like Richard Branson may be the first billionaire to travel to space. Virgin Galactic says its founder will be on the company's next test flight out of New Mexico. That's scheduled for July 11th, just 9 days before fellow billionaire and Branson rival Jeff Bezos is expected to travel. But Branson says it's not a race.
I would love Jeff to come and see our flight off whenever it takes place. And I would love to go and watch him go in his flight. And I think both of us will wish each other well. And it really doesn't matter whether one of us goes a few days before the other.
But for the past 2 decades, Branson and Bezos have been competing to launch space travel for the public. The Virgin Galactic launch will take Branson and the crew to the edge of space, beyond the Earth's atmosphere. They'll even be able to experience a few minutes of weightlessness. A successful flight would mark a key milestone for an ambitious new industry hoping to go mainstream. When Jeff Bezos goes to space after Branson, an 82-year-old woman will go with him too. She'll finally get her chance to view space after training to be an astronaut 60 years ago. Bezos' Blue Origin announced Thursday Wally Funk will take one spot on the month's flight to its new Shepard spacecraft. She'll make the suborbital trip with Blue Origin's founder Jeff Bezos and his brother. Funk trained with NASA's Mercury program in the 1960s but didn't get the opportunity to go to space. She's logged nearly 20,000 flying hours as a pilot since then, though, and taught more than 3,000 people how to fly. She'll now fly as an honored guest when New Shepard launches on July 20th. And futuristic vehicles are turning science fiction into reality. And this week, a company in Slovakia tested a flying car prototype, sending it soaring between 2 city airports. The roadworthy vehicle could be transformed into a plane in just a few minutes. NTD's Colin Fredrickson takes us there.
By extending its narrow folded wings and retractable tail, a 4-wheeled car transforms into an airplane in under 3 minutes. This is Aircar, a prototype flying car developed by Slovakian company Kleinvision. On Monday, Aircar completed a 35-minute test flight between 2 Slovak airports. The company founder and designer Stefan Klein drove it straight off the runway and into town. The intercity flight distance measured in at about 50 miles. The car has flown at an altitude of over 8,000 feet, reaching a maximum cruising speed of almost 120 miles per hour. The company said it was the car's 142nd successful landing. It's completed over 40 hours worth of test flights so far, including tests for stability and maneuverability. According to Kleinvision, Aircar's second prototype is expected to reach cruising speeds of almost 190 miles per hour.
It's one way to get over the Hudson. And that's the latest business updates for today, too. You can still catch NTD Evening News with Stephanie Cox. That's at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. For NTD Business, that's all for this week. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you Monday.
We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.